Hi everybody, my name is Emer McBride and I'm the Programme Director for IoB's Level 7 Professional Certificate in Responsible and Sustainable Finance. IoB is the industry's lifelong learning partner and supports financial services professionals to learn and progress in this dynamic environment. From early career to executive leadership, our UCD accredited programmes provide you with the skills you need to succeed. IoB is a network of over 32,000 financial services professionals with a shared passion for education and delivering the highest standards of excellence for customers and society. And this year I'm delighted to say that IoB is celebrating its 125th anniversary. All members have access to our innovative learning platform available as a desktop application and mobile app, IoB Learn. You can access content that we have created and curated, designed especially for those working in financial services. Our content channels include career, compliance, credit and lending, culture, digital, ESG, funds, financial advice and planning, retail banking, risk and wellness. First of all, thank you to all the team at Kuma for inviting me to speak at your conference and for showing such leadership in an important area like climate change and its impact on financial services. I'm delighted to be here to talk to you today about our Level 7 Professional Certificate in Responsible and Sustainable Finance. Firstly, what does Level 7 mean? Well, all of IoB's accredited programmes are accredited by UCD. University College Dublin is consistently ranked in the top 1% of higher education institutes in the world. Programmes at Level 7 on the framework predominantly focus on the knowledge and understanding of a subject area. So it's really designed to give you the overview of responsible and sustainable finance, and so you can understand the entire breadth of the world that we're talking about in that instance. In terms of the structure, this is a one-module programme which means that there's about 100 to 125 hours of learning over 15 weeks. It's delivered completely online, so all of your teaching will be in the form of both live and recorded webinars. The module is 100% assessed by continuous assessment, which means there's no end of semester exam, so you'll be working on continuous assessment with 2 submissions throughout the trimester. Our associate faculty are the unique combination of experts in industry for sustainable finance, as well as having the academic rigour of a university lecturer. So it's a really fantastic combination, and all students are supported by a dedicated programme manager, or as I like to think about them, a student success manager. I know that the topic of today and the overarching theme of today is climate change and the impact of climate change on the financial services sector, particularly credit unions. But just to give context to what's covered in the module, I want to talk a little bit about the impact of climate change. So we know, and the evidence from the scientific community is overwhelming at this point. Report after report after report after report is showing the impact of climate change. Unfortunately, we're now seeing it in our lives. We're seeing it globally, but also closer to home. And we're seeing even in Ireland more extreme weather events. And crucially, and what's particularly crucial for the financial services sector, we're seeing those happening at the same time or in very short bursts close to each other. And what we know from science is that is only going to accelerate. So what we're seeing now in 2, 5, 10, 15 years is going to be dramatically increased. So just to talk a little bit about some of the impacts of climate change and just to try and group them together, is what we are going to see is the cost of adapting coastal areas to rising sea levels. We know that the sea levels are rising. We know that they're going to continue to rise. We know that we have the technology to mitigate against that rise in some instances, but the cost of financing those mitigations is going to be significant. We know that there's going to be a loss of capacity to work and to produce due to heat and the increase in heat. We've already seen parts of India reach temperatures that over not that long a time, but over a sustained period of time, are incompatible with human life. We're going to see more wars and more civil disruption in order to gain access to limited and considerably limiting resources. And fresh water will be continue to be in short supply. And equally, the cost of making water suitable for drink and suitable for the population is also going to increase as well. Urbanization, it's a chicken and egg scenario really when you think about urbanization, but urbanization will be a challenge for climate change. The cost of cooling, and particularly in more tropical areas, cooling entire cities and towns is going to be a challenge. You're looking at the population of somewhere with huge, tens of millions, somewhere like Manila, which already is incredibly costly to keep cool. That's only going to get worse. We're going to see the shrinking productivity of harvests, and as a result, the cost of foodstuff and consumer goods will rise, and extreme weather events will cause and continue to exacerbate widespread poverty as well. What we will also see is an increase of disease due to rising temperatures and due to all of the other pieces that I spoke about there. And that's before we see accelerator events like permafrost melting and all that. So whilst that is a picture of doom and gloom, absolutely accept that, we know, and science is also telling us, that whilst we can't stop climate change. We can slow it to a degree, we can't stop it, but we do have the technology and we do have the tools to mitigate against it. But we need to, and from a financial services perspective, we need to be able to fund the transition, and equally we need to ensure that the sustainability of the sector. So we need to ensure that where we're lending for green projects, and that we're not lending for unsustainable means. So that's all for consideration. So while it is doom and gloom, it is for contextual pieces. So this programme, the Professional Certificate in Responsible and Sustainable Finance, it looks at a number of different areas. And again, if you think back to our umbrella model, it's at a knowledge and understanding piece. So what we wanted to do with this, and the feedback that we've gotten from the industry, is that there's so much that's being spoken about, that's being channeled through media, through industry reports about climate change and sustainable finance, it can be a little bit overwhelming. So what we wanted to do with this programme was to give everybody enough ground and foundational knowledge at that knowledge and understanding level to begin to understand it in the context of the financial services sector. So you'll see on screen there some of the areas that it covers. So again, a deeper dive into the planetary change, the climate change aspects, introducing the concept of sustainable finance, what it means, what are the EU and domestic regulatory initiatives. This can cause a lot of confusion for people because there's so many different bodies producing so many different guidelines, directives, actual laws. It can be quite difficult to understand the nuances between them. So we break it down very accessibly for people. We get into a little bit then of responsible banking, investment, the concept of a sustainable financial services product. What does that look like, and what will that look like for those of you working in a credit union? We then get into non-financial disclosures, climate and sustainable reporting, and very critically, risk management. We then focus on green, social and sustainable bonds, implementing a culture of sustainability and the future path. So I'm not going to go into detail on a deep dive on every aspect there, but I am going to focus on some things that will be of interest to a credit union audience in particular. So at the start, and again, I won't repeat my doom and gloom of the impact of climate change, but it does give a deeper dive into actually understanding what the various models are telling us and what that means, as far as we can tell, for the future. And as I mentioned, things like accelerator events like the thawing of permafrost are typically not included in those reports. So again, it gives a little bit of detail for the layperson, for those working in the financial services sector to understand. So you don't have to be a qualified geographer or scientist, but it's actually distilling that in a way that's straightforward to consume. An introduction to the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs, and then a touch on things like the National Development Plan and contextual areas like the Paris Climate Agreement, where for the first time the world decided to try and limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. We know that is increasingly unlikely at this point, but it gives that context of why we're talking about 1.5 degrees and why at the time that was the target, right? And then we talk a little bit about global and introduce global and national targets there. We then get into the concept of donut economics and how economics is changing. So and the impact perhaps of our economic model on the planetary changes that we're seeing. And then the various definitions of sustainable finance. It doesn't matter who you talk to. I could poll this entire room and everybody would have a different definition of sustainable finance, and then get into a little bit of the function of the finance system. So everybody in the room absolutely knows the function of the finance system, but again, this is in the context of ESG considerations. We then get into, again, that deeper dive on who are the players here. So we hear about the UN. We know the UN are critical to it. Who, why, and what? Then other international organisations as well. The central banks and their lens and their role on it. The NGOs, what impact do they play? What, if any, role do they have for financial services? And then again, some of the key initiatives that you'll hear about again and again and again, like the EU Green Deal and the EU Action Plan for Sustainable Finance. We then get into a world of deep complexity. We'll call it that, when we're talking about non-financial disclosures and climate and sustainable reporting. This will be the most discussed thing in financial services for the next at least 3 to 5 years. One of the reasons why is that there's where everybody's starting out on it, and there's very little consistency in terms of actually what needs to be reported. And it in a few years' time, it will be much clearer. But up until then, it is taking that little bit of time. So again, this section aims to really distill that. So we look at the non-financial requirements under EU law, global reporting initiatives, CDP, and what sometimes it's formally known as, but it's still referred to sometimes as the Carbon Disclosure Project. And then we get into Climate Disclosures Standards Board as well. So again, this is really designed to take the mystery out of it and to break it down for you very much. And then critical is risk management. Risk management, as I alluded to at the start, it's critical for the financial services sector and for those of us who are regulated entities to understand what the impact of climate change is on our own operations, as well as our lending and as well as future trends in it. So in this section, we look at the impact of sustainable finance on risk management, the top risks. How do you integrate ESG into credit decisions? And what, if anything, any way does that impact on the bottom line? Get into credit ratings, what the different credit agencies are saying and thinking about it, and then the actual climate change impact themselves. So particularly with a particular focus on physical and transition risk there. One thing to note as well with this programme is that there is often government funding available to support those who wish to do it. So that's via either Springboard or Sustainable Finance SkillNet. So depending on when you're doing it, there may also be funding available for it. So please do ask us about that. Thank you so much for your time today. And once again, thank you so much to Kuma for both the invitation to address this audience and for the strong leadership they're showing in this area. If you have any questions, please do either visit our website on iob.ie or contact us at education@iob.ie. I'd be delighted to hear from you. Thank you so much.